This is the way to greatness. And this is chapter 4, fear number 1, failure. Sarah Blackley was a frustrated consumer with a problem. She wanted underwear that didn't show lines, was flattering to women's figures, and was not heavy or uncomfortable. It actually started with my own butt because I couldn't figure out what to wear under white pants. So, with a sharp pair of scissors, she cut the legs out of a pair of controlled top pantyhose as a prototype. And the revolutionary idea for Spanx was born. It's the time she came up with the idea for Spanx. Blackley was in her late 20s and a former Disney cast member turned door to door fax machine salesperson, a career she had pursued for 7 years. She didn't have a business background. She didn't have a lot of capital to invest. She didn't have connections to hosiery manufacturing. She was even told by some businessmen to get ready because business is war. She didn't want to go to war. She wanted to help women. It was a perfect recipe for failure, but Blackley had a bit of secret weapon that no one knew about. When she was a kid, sitting around the dinner table at night, her dad would ask her and her brother a seemingly odd question. What did you fail at today? Then her dad would encourage them to write down the hidden gifts, the lessons that came from their failures. Not exactly typical dinner table talk in most parenting books, but it helped her get in the habit of destigmatizing failure and building her risk taking muscle. In fact, she says that if she didn't have a failure to share, her dad would be disappointed. So she learned to define failure differently and embrace it as an important part of life. Failure for me became not trying versus achieving the outcome. Once you redefine that for yourself and realize that failure is just not trying, then life opens up to you in many ways. So इस लेसन से हमारी क्या लर्निंग हुई? ब्लैकली जो मैडम थी, उनको अपनी अपने कुछ डिजाइन चाहिए थे अंडरवेयर की जो दिखे नहीं व्हाइट पैंट में पहने हुए। तो उन्होंने क्या किया, एक उनको एक एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी डिजाइन चाहिए था जो सिंपल तो दिख रहा है आज के दिन में, बट उस टाइम में कोई नहीं यूज करता था, इसीलिए वो परेशान थी। अब उन्होंने कुछ किया और काफी दिनों तक उनको कोई सक्सेस नहीं मिला। इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? क्या वो फेलियर थी? लेकिन उनके ये कंसिस्टेंसी के पीछे एक स्टोरी थी। उनके पापा डिनर टेबल में जब भी बैठते थे, तब दोनों बच्चों से, इनको और उनके भाई को, पूछते थे कि आज का दिन कैसा रहा और आज के दिन फेलियर क्या था। तो जिस दिन कोई फेलियर कोई नहीं बताता, क्योंकि हमको आदत नहीं है फेलियर बताने की, हमको तो आउटकम और सक्सेस बताने की आदत है। सो क्या किए जो अधूरा रह गया, जो जो जिसमें फेल हो गया, ये अगर एक हैबिट बनी रही तो बच्चों में फेलियर को डिफाइन करने के तरीके आ जाते हैं। फेलियर इज नॉट ट्राइंग। बाकी जो भी आप करते हो, इर्रेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द आउटकम, अच्छा है, बुरा है, कुछ भी है, राइट, वो आपके लिए सक्सेस है। एंड अगर आपने फेल्योर को इस तरह से डिफाइन करना सीख लिया, देन लाइफ विल बी ओपनिंग अप इन मेनी वेज। यही बोल रहे हैं वो। तो इसको फेसबुक में थोड़ा सा लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग कर देते हैं विथ For 2 years, Blackley heard no from dozens of hosiery manufacturers who wouldn't give her a shot. She was priced out by patent lawyers, so she, she drafted her own patent agreement using a book she found at Barnes and Noble, only turning to an attorney for the things she couldn't do. Department stores refused to sell the product, saying it was too risky. She came up with the name Spanx because by changing the case in Spanx to an X, it was easier to trademark and market. But still, she persisted. She knew she had a good product, so she ignored the chatter, trusted her intuition, and pushed forward. After all, to her way of thinking, failure isn't wasn't not launching Spanx. Failure was not trying. यहाँ पे एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट एक लर्निंग है, वो ये है कि जब सभी कोई आपको राइट ऑफ कर दिए हों, जब सभी कोई आपके स्टाइल को पसंद ना करते हो, जब आपका स्टाइल ट्रेंडी ना हो, तब आप क्या करोगे? आपका इंट्यूशन, आपका जो अच्छा जो लगता है आपको, the way you love to persist, the way you love to slug, वो अगर किसी और को नहीं पसंद आता, तब क्या करोगे? यही मेरे साथ हो रहा है. सो आपको भी अगर वैसा लग रहा है, तो आप ना एक अच्छा सा एडवाइस है अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस बुक, वो है कि आपको जो अच्छा लगता है, प्लीज उसको परसिस्ट कीजिए, कंटिन्यू ऑन दैट ओनली, क्योंकि वही आपको इसलिए आ रहा है क्योंकि वो आपका यूनिक स्टाइल है, आपको वो अच्छा लगता है. आपके जैसे कुछ लोग और भी होंगे जिनको ये स्टाइल अच्छा लगता है, और ये आपका ब्रांड आगे जाके बनेगा क्योंकि आप ऐसे हो, राइट? लेट अस कंटिन्यू. Fast forward 20 plus years, and in October 2021, this pioneer form fitting shapewear company was valued at $1.2 billion. Now the market is littered with competitors. जिसको पहले किसी ने बनाने से इनकार कर दिया है, 2021 में वो $1.2 बिलियन उसकी नेटवर्थ आंकी गई थी. और जाहिर है, जब कुछ एस्टेब्लिश हो जाता है तो कॉम्पिटिटर्स आ जाते हैं और आपको अच्छे से अच्छा डिजाइन मिलने लगता है. The fear of failure didn't derail her because the fear of not trying was stronger. In an Instagram post, she summed up her philosophy. 2 things are required to pursue your dreams: hustle and willingness to put yourself out there. The 2 things people are most afraid of are fear of failure and fear of being embarrassed. I am constantly working on both of these fears so I can live the life I want, free from the burden of caring what other people think of me. What I have found is that it actually becomes fun and funny. The worst thing that what happens, you end up with a great story. So what are you waiting for? At the end of our conversation on my show, I asked Sarah the same question I do of all my guests. What is your definition of greatness? My definition of greatness would be going for it no matter what, despite fear, and making the absolute most of the life that you were given, because it is not a dress rehearsal. जो भी लाइफ आपको मिला है, जिस भी तरह से मिला है, जिस भी तरह से आपको जीना अच्छा लगता है, वो राइट है आपके लिए एंड आप जैसे बहुत सारे लोगों के लिए. तो प्लीज परसिस्ट ऑन डूइंग व्हाटएवर, कंटिन्यूअस बेसिस. कंसिस्टेंस का कोई अल्टरनेटिव नहीं होता. अगर आप कंसिस्टेंट हो तो आप प्रूव कर सकते कि यू वर डिफरेंट. The funny thing about failure is a funny thing. Not in the sense that every failure should be followed by a full-on chuckle or a belly laugh of epic proportions. Maybe that is true in some cases, But most of the time, failure is painful, embarrassing, and not lot of fun. We certainly don't seek it out. फेलियर किसको चाहिए? किसी को नहीं चाहिए. बहुत एम्बेरसमेंट होता है कभी कभी, लेकिन होने दीजिए ना. Failure is funny because for something that we each do so well and so often, most of the time, we don't want to think about our failures, remember our failures, or in some cases, even admit that we have failed. And yet, without failure, we can't move forward. Without failure, we would never try anything new. Without failure, we would never discover a better way. Without failure, we would never get any better, stronger, or tougher. Failure isn't something to be shunned, overlooked, or wasted. Failure is a critical part of the fabric of life. हम 100 में से शायद 99 टाइम्स फेल होते हैं, एग्री नहीं करते, एडमिट नहीं करते, बट फेल होते हैं. और उसी फेलियर की वजह से हमारा जो इकलौता सक्सेस है वो बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग बन के आता है. वो सक्सेस बनता है क्योंकि उसके पीछे 99 फेलियर्स का एक्सपीरियंस होता है. बहुत पेनफुल है. 99 टाइम्स फेल होना कोई बहुत इजी बात तो नहीं है, लेकिन इट टेक्स द टफनेस ऑफ द हीरो टू कंकर ऑल दोस फेलियर्स. Failure isn't something to be shunned, overlooked, or wasted. Robert Greene, an American author, has found that depending on how we choose to avoid failure, insecurities can operate one of two ways. अगर हम फेलियर को अवॉइड करें तो इनसिक्योरिटी आती है दो तरह से. फर्स्ट, we can choose to let our insecurities hold us back and avoid the pain of failure, never trying anything. From this perspective, you might try your hardest and find others who are still better than you. But if you don't try, you can always at the best slacker. ट्राई कीजिए, आप दूसरों से हजारों गुना ज्यादा अच्छा नजर आएंगे खुद को, बिकॉज यू आर ट्राइंग समथिंग न्यू. जो एस्टेब्लिश तरीके हैं वो तो है ही, वो तो किसी को सक्सेस दिए ही हैं. बट अगर आप कुछ नया ट्राई कर रहे हैं, फेलियर होता है भले ही, बट इट गिव्स यू यूनिकनेस. द वे मैं भी ये फेलियर होते होते आपने कुछ सीखा और गिव अप कर दिया इस रास्ते को, इस मॉडल को, इस प्रोसेस को, बट द ऑब्जेक्टिव स्टेज द सेम. और आप दूसरी तरीके से इसको एस्टेब्लिश करने की कोशिश करेंगे क्योंकि you don't give up on yourself. Second, we can choose to let our insecurities motivate us and avoid failure by working our hardest. ये कर सकते हैं. As Sarah's story shows, the fear of failure, when channeled properly, can actually cause us to develop persistence, build resourcefulness, and fuel innovation. रिसोर्सफुलनेस की बात मैं इसलिए करती हूँ, रिसोर्सफुल इन्फ्लुएंस की, क्योंकि उसके पीछे कई सारे फेलियर्स होते हैं. आप अगर बहुत सारे फेलियर्स का सामना कर चुके हो, देन यू आर ए रिसोर्सफुल इन्फ्लुएंसर. आप इसलिए जाने जाते हो क्योंकि आपने एक छोटा सा टाइनी सा कहीं पे सक्सेस लिया है, डिस्पाइट ऑल दोस फेलियर्स. वो इजी नहीं होता और वो आपको मुफ्त में नहीं मिला है. यू हैव अर्नड इट, और वो आपको यूनिकनेस देता है. द डाउट डायग्राम. इतने सारे फेलियर हो जाए तो डाउट तो आता ही है. इन हर बुक गुड एंजाइटी, डॉक्टर वेंडी सुजुकी आइडेंटिफाइज एन array of common anxieties, including the fear of public speaking. मुझे था. फाइनेंशियल इनसिक्योरिटी सबको होता है. सोशल एंजाइटी पता नहीं, एंड जनरल एंजाइटी. कभी भी किसी को भी किसी बात पे एंजाइटी हो सकती है. These anxieties can lead to obsessive compulsions until all you can think about are your fears. Add to that things like pandemics and all the uncertainties of life, and none of us have a shortage of candidates for fears. सबको डर लगता है. I have wrestled with debilitating self-doubt at times myself. The belief deep down at my core that somehow I was not enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I was too young. I didn't have enough connections. My talents weren't enough. I even had other people tell me that I wouldn't be able to realize my meaningful mission. And my fears contributed to all of it. Self doubt is simply the killer of dreams. When you doubt yourself, it is really hard to have the confidence to chase what you want and take action to pursue your meaningful mission. That sense that you are just not enough can usually be tracked back to one of three core fears. It might help to think of them in what I call the doubt diagram. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of judgment. And the intersection of all these three, fear of failure भी जहाँ है, fear of success भी जहाँ है, fear of judgment भी जहाँ है, वो ही self doubt है. In her book Women Evolve, Sarah Jakes Roberts says we are in relationships with our fears. Like an overbearing partner, they constantly influence us and often dictate our action. They go where we go. They pretend to keep us safe when in reality, they just consume and manipulate us. That is why Sarah says we need to break up with our fears. And the first fear you may need to break up with is the fear of failure, our default position. Dan Millman, an American author and lecturer in the personal development field, often says, raise your hand if you have ever been afraid of failure. Yes. He told me that at least 80% of the people in the room always raise a hand. I have seen that same trend when I make the same request. Clearly, the fear of failure is common to us all. But that fear holds so many people back from pursuing their meaningful mission. As Millman told me, our self doubt inhibits a purposeful life. Dan has learned that the best way to get out of your own way is to focus on your purpose, your own meaningful mission, not on what might go wrong on the journey. I have found that to be true for me as well. As an athlete, I was taught that failure is a part of the journey toward success. You fail your way to learning how to catch the ball. You miss a shot and then you adjust. You make a mistake, learn from it, and make a change. Failure for me was just part of practice, part of my daily learning to improve and move me towards my goals because I knew emotionally and mentally that failure was a necessary step to accomplishing success for my goals. I was never afraid to fail as an athlete. Like I mentioned earlier, all of us know this from a young age. When we are learning to walk, no one expects a child to succeed on the first attempt. Of course not. Every child stumbles and falls 1,000 times while learning to walk, but no one tells the child walking isn't for them. We encourage them to pick themselves up and try again, knowing the only thing that can stop them from succeeding is not trying. But then, as we get older, we let that fear of failure feel abnormal, even though experiencing failure and fear are part of what it means to be human. You are always afraid, says Dr. Jordan Peterson, a Canadian professor of psychology, except when you learn not to be. Fear is our default position as humans. So, if you are afraid of failure, that means you are normal. But running from your fears isn't that the answer. Letting them define who you are doesn't work. According to Peterson, when we are exposed to what we are afraid of, we get less afraid of everything. Believe it or not, one of my top fears used to be public speaking. After I joined Toastmasters and started speaking every single week to a small audience, I began to feel more comfortable and eventually was regularly getting paid good money to speak audiences of up to 20,000 people. But I still wasn't always comfortable with it, not at all. Every single time I had a speaking engagement, I was afraid of how I would look on stage. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing and things embarrassed while people laughed at me. I thought I would start stuttering and fall all over my words if I didn't fall on the stairs on the way to the stage. A few hours before one of my big events, I told one of my coaches, Chris Lee, about my fears. He challenged me to flip the script running in my head by pointing out that my fears were all about me, how I might look, how I might feel, how I might make a mistake. What if I make it all about serving other people? Why was I speaking for me, for my audience? That shift in thinking about service began the wheels turning. He followed it by asking me questions in what I call the then what exercise. What if I forget what I am going to say next? Okay, then what? Well, I would be embarrassed. Okay, then what? I might run off the stage. Okay, then what? Everyone would laugh. Okay, then what? I would probably not leave home for a week. Okay, then what? I'd probably eventually pick myself back up and keep moving forward. I realized what Chris was getting at. Even in the worst case scenario, I would eventually be okay. And like Spanx founder Sarah Blakely mentioned, I would have a funny story to tell. So why not just keep all the anxiety in the middle and start with everything will be okay in the first place? After that awakening, everything changed for me. I realized the power of the Sukhinder Singh Kasidi, president of StubHub, calls the choice after the choice. And I knew that if my focus was on serving other people, then all my fears about what might happen to me became irrelevant. What can failure teach you? There are two general types of fear. The first type is healthy fear of something dangerous. There are some things we should fear, things that will in fact harm us. That is when our fight or flight instinct comes in handy to protect us from harm. But the second type consists of wounded fears that hold us back emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically from making decisions that will make our future greater. These fears keep us living in the past. They are psychological fears as opposed to being driven by real life danger. Our fear of failure usually falls into this psychological fear category rather than the threat or real life danger, even though it sometimes feels like it. The, the world probably won't end if you fail at most things in life. Some notable exceptions might include skydiving, atomic fusion, landing on Mars, but I digress. Remember, there is something worse than failing, the regret of not trying. On the other hand, failure can help us learn and grow. You might fail and may even receive criticism. But if you take that failure as an opportunity to learn what didn't work, you will create something better, maybe even great, the next time. For example, after his widely popular book, The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene worked on another book he just knew would be a breakthrough success. He labored over the manuscript for a year, but then he submitted the manuscript to the publisher. They dropped the project. Robert was stunned. The feedback he received was that his audience wanted to hear more of his thoughts, but he had collaborated with rapper 50 Cent, and made the book more about his collaborator than his own perspectives. Instead of quitting, Robert chose to learn from his spectacular failure. He took the feedback to heart, rewrote the book in 8 months, and found another publisher. The 50th Law by 50 Cent and Robert Greene became another huge success. As he told me, learn, Robert has learned to see failure as a chance to reorient or better yourself. And he knows all about a disrupted life. When he suffered a stroke in 2018, nearly half of his body stopped functioning the way it did before. Yet, he calls it a blessing because it taught him that any day could be his last. Defeat and failure are the greatest thing that could ever happen to you, says Robert. Failure teaches you your limits and makes you realize what you did wrong. It shows you what you could do differently. With this mentality, he has pressed forward, working on yet another transformative book. Successes rarely spark much reflection. Failure is how we grow. Sarah Jakes Roberts' theory is that people quit after failing because they are looking to add to their own value. But as Sarah says, success is in the process, not the outcome. When you don't depend on a specific outcome to define your worth, you are free to become great by failing, learning, and moving forward. Dan Millman is another terrific example of someone who embraces the failure is learning mentality. When he was 60 years old, he decided he wanted to learn to ride a unicycle. He borrowed from a friend who gave him sage advice. Practice on a tennis court. Dan donned a helmet and mounted the unicycle, gripping the chain link fence with white knuckles. All his first attempt to pedal, the unicycle shot out from under him, leaving him dangling from the fence. Again and again, he failed. It took a week of humbling practice every day to reach the point where he could pedal 6 times before falling. After 2 weeks, he could do about 15, 20 pedals, 12 pedals. By week 3, he was doing figure eights. From this experience, he learned two things. First, whether it is changing habits or learning to ride a unicycle, everything is difficult at first. Second, there were intermittent days when everything fell apart. He would be doing well one day and then the next would be worse. This trend confused and discouraged him until he observed a pattern. He discovered that his breakthrough days came right after his bad days. It was on these alleged bad days that the learning happened. The struggle to climb out after our failures explode can give us perspective and make us stronger and wiser. Dan told me he believes this same pattern is true with his other life skills. Sometimes we feel like we are getting worse, vegetating, or even going backward, but we may be backing up to get a running start. Even when we can't see the progress, learning can take place if we keep moving forward. Sometimes you are going to stuck. कितना भी सक्सेस हो ले, कभी कभी आप स्टक जरूर हो जाओ, क्योंकि हर एक दिन अगर आप ट्राई कर रहे हैं, इफ यू आर इनोवेटिव, देन हर एक दिन इज अ डिफरेंट डे एंड हर एक दिन आपकी लर्निंग होती है. हर एक दिन आपके सक्सेस का पिछला दिन होता है जिस दिन आप सीख रहे होते. So, back in 2009, Rian Sarhant was a fledgling real estate agent in New York City. One of his first clients was a woman who was hunting for an apartment in the West Village. He was excited about the possibilities because the commission would have set him for a wife. However, Rian was not on his home turf and without a GPS. The morning that he drove her to check out apartments, he got himself and his quickly disappointed client lost not once but twice. He was She told him at the end of that day, the worst agent and should never be allowed to practice real estate again. Ouch. Although the experience shook him, Rian learned an important lesson from that failure. It doesn't matter how long you have been in any business, new challenges can still catch you off guard. But that doesn't mean you give up. Rian took an honest look at his performance and admitted that he could have prepared better. He should have researched the area in advance. He should have woken up early and learned the streets. At that moment, he made a choice. Even though he was not from New York, didn't have the connections, and didn't look the part, he was determined he would be the best real estate agent ever. Not long after his resolution, an international client approached Rian. Rian pushed aside his self doubt, learned from his failure, and performed the role of a successful broker. He sold the client a $2.1 million apartment, making over 24,000 in commission. More importantly, the experience confirmed for Rian Farhant that he could accomplish his real estate dreams if he was willing to learn from his failures. Now, let me be clear. Breaking up with the fear of failure, as Sarah Jakes Roberts put it, isn't easy. And breaking up with the fear doesn't mean you won't experience that fear going forward. As she says, faith makes a demand on courage. It can be difficult to make that kind of leap from total doubt to courageous faith. It is understandable that we may feel indecisive when choosing between two such extremes. It can be tempting to procrastinate making that leap. But if we want to become a master, we have to do what Sarah says. We have to come to a place where we realize that not everything you do is going to win. It's like you are gonna stuck sometimes. When your goal is mastery, you recognize that failure is going to be a part of the process. But because you want to be a master, you dissect that failure, extract the wisdom from it, and apply it to the next try. Because at the end of the day, I am going for the mastery. I believe that when we allow ourselves to stay in a relationship with that fear of failure, or any fear for that matter, what we are really afraid of is that we might discover we are not enough. Sarah describes it as the fear that this will become the evidence that my insecurities need to keep me from being who I am supposed to be. The problem with thinking this way is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our fear of falling short causes us to remain frozen and ensures we never fulfill our meaningful mission. Your risk-taking equation. Failure is so dependable that the only way to avoid it is to never try anything at all. The people we see as the best, the greatest athletes, the most successful entrepreneurs, or the people making the most impact in the world are all continuously failing. Priyanka Chopra Jonas, an Indian actress, model, singer, and winner of the Miss World 2000 pageant, is someone who realizes it is futile to try to avoid failure. When you want to create a legacy, she told me, it's that you do after failure that matters. As she describes it, when you first attempt something new, failures are inevitable. But if you never try anything new, you will never evolve. And that is a much greater risk. When you make a habit of trying new things, you diversify, increasing your chances of success. If you only stick with what you know, you put your fate in only a few skills and opportunities. And I love this powerful point she makes. Every successful person has failed along the way to their success. So, why should you be any different? Sometimes The only way to find success is to admit your current state of failure. Actor Ethan Suplee has an inspirational story of weight loss, a journey that saw him lose more than 250 pounds. But before he could begin that journey, he had to first come to the realization that he needed to change. After entering a romantic relationship with a woman who enjoyed physical activities, Ethan realized he would have to get healthy if he wanted to sustain the relationship. His first step to a healthy lifestyle was to voice his intentions to his girlfriend. According to Ethan, that conversation was scary because it felt like, in doing so, he was revealing that his life was a failure. By voicing his intentions to his girlfriend and feeling the risk of embarrassment if he failed to follow through with his intentions, Ethan leveraged his fear of failure to motivate him to better health and an amazing physical transformation. Instead of letting that fear paralyze him, he looked ahead and realized the price of inactivity. A lost romantic relationship was greater than the price of standing still. So, उन्होंने गर्लफ्रेंड को खो दिया क्योंकि उन्होंने बताया कि उनके पास वो फिजिकल एबिलिटी है ही नहीं एंड ए पर्सन उनकी गर्लफ्रेंड को इनकी फिजिकल एबिलिटीज पे ज्यादा भरोसा था सो बिकॉज एट द टाइम जब वो बात कर रहे थे तब वो नहीं थी तो गर्लफ्रेंड क्या करती उनके साथ चली गई बट दैट वाज द इंस्पिरेशन ही क्रिएटेड फॉर हिमसेल्फ टू बिकम हेल्दी इस तरह के खोने की आदत हमको डालनी पड़ेगी कुछ जिसके लिए हम अभी नहीं बने हैं जिसके लिए अभी हमारी काबिलियत नहीं है हम उसको रिटेन नहीं कर सकते उस रिटेन करने के चक्कर में अगर हम गलती करते रहें या फिर कोशिश ना करें तो हम उसको कभी रिटेन तो नहीं कर सकते बट हम वो टाइम भी जाया कर देते हैं राइट टू ओवरकम पैरालिसिस फ्रॉम फियर Sukhinder Singh Cassidy recommends a similar technique called the risk-taking equation. She recommends playing out in your mind the decisions you were afraid to make. By running these scenarios, says Sukhinder, you find there are very few decisions you cannot recover from if they fail. She says we need to let go of the myth of the single choice and stop believing our choices are either or. ये हो गया तो ये कभी नहीं होगा नहीं होगा तो क्या सो व्हाट ये चॉइसेस हमको खुद को देना पड़ेगा taking a big risk does not necessarily mean the only two possible outcomes are either a big reward or a major loss this kind of thinking puts too much pressure on the first choice there are many possible journeys and with every choice we discover opportunities to orient ourselves toward success As she told me, the people she knows who are successful are measured by small and big acts of possibility. They are masters at the process of risk taking and constantly choosing. Pain points the way. Ray Dalio is another person who embraced failure and learned that pain not pleasure, is what makes us wise. Ray is the founder, co-chairman, and co-chief investment officer of Bridgewater Associates, the fifth most important private company in the US, according to the Fortune magazine. He is the 69th richest person in the world at the time of this writing and worth over $20 billion. He has been called the Steve Jobs of investing by Wired magazine and named one of the top 100 most influential people by Time magazine. In other words, if anyone should know something about success, it would be Ray. And yet, he told me he learned more from his failures than from his success. One of Ray's greatest losses occurred early in his investing career. In 1981, he had predicted that America would experience an economic crisis as a result of the loans American banks had made to countries they didn't think were capable of repaying. As it turned out, Mexico defaulted in 1982, proving Ray's prediction true and gaining him a lot of attention. So he made a second prediction of a depression on the horizon. Instead of a debt crisis, though, the stock market turned around. The point Ray predicted to be the beginning of a downward spiral for the market turned out to be only the dip before the rise. Because of his miscalculation, Ray lost not only his money but also that of his clients. He had to borrow $4,000 from his father just to pay the bills. Surprisingly, Ray calls this failure the best thing to happen to him. He says it taught him to balance boldness with caution. As he reflected on his failure, he evolved. He began seeking intelligent people with different opinions from his own. As a result, he learned to test his theories more thoroughly before risking everything on a prediction. Since he made these changes, he has seen great success. The success was only possible because he learned he could not know everything and that he needed to lean on a team of diverse thinkers. According to Ray, reality doesn't care if you accept it in the face of failure. The world will keep turning regardless of your actions. All we can do is to try to understand reality and learn how to approach it when failure happens. Emergency reserves. So if failure is inevitable, अगर failure होता ही रहता है, तो करना क्या है? कुछ रिजर्व रखना चाहिए. Why should we fear it? हमेशा ही fear अगर होगा, तो fear से डरना कैसा? What if instead we gave ourselves permission to fail on the journey to greatness? Marisa Sharif, a professor of the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, was inspired when she observed that many people, herself included, failed to meet goals in their lives because of what she called what the hell moments. These moments come when someone has a small backslide from a healthy direction, which can tempt them to totally abandon their greater goal. For example, someone might set a goal to consume a total of 1500 calories a day. They might meet that goal Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but then Thursday morning, donuts at the office. Then the small failure of one donut cascades into pizza and potato chips for dinner the rest of the week. Because what the hell? I have already failed. To attempt to solve this issue, Marisa set the goal to work out every day of the week, but allowed herself 2 emergency reserve days when life might get in the way and make working out impossible. So that is the cheat days that we call. Exercise में भी होता है, खाने पे भी होता है. This structure lets her relax in those moments of tension. Instead of giving up on her bigger goals and not working out the rest of the week, she can tap into her reserves and know she is still acting with integrity towards her goals. Just having the knowledge that emergency reserves exist tends to motivate people and keep them on track to reaching the bigger goal. Katie Milkman told me she sees this sort of failure recovery techniques as a way of forgiving ourselves. She says to avoid permanent failure, we have to arrange a backup plan and backup plan to that backup plan. The fear of failure does not have to derail your journey to greatness, but perhaps it is not the fear of failure, but just the opposite that holds you back. Engaging greatness. I will provide you with a comprehensive fear of conversion toolkit at the end of this section to help you take action to overcome the barriers of greatness. For now, ask yourself some simple questions. To what extent do you struggle to overcome the fear of failure? How has this fear held you back from wholeheartedly pursuing your meaningful mission? List any failure failure fears you have now while they are fresh in your mind. You can use the exercises in the fear conversion toolkit at the end of this section to further identify and find help to overcome them. So we will do that. Let me see what is there in the toolkit. Your that is in chapter 8. So we will wait till that time, right? So thank you for watching, and we will take this maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Wait till that time. Thank you for watching.